Okay, picture this. What if you could get someone to tell you anything? I mean, anything, without ever asking them a single question. Sounds like some kind of superpower, right? Well, it's not. It's a real psychological technique, one that spies have perfected, and we're about to dive right in. Let's set the scene. The year is 1955. We're in a kinda dimly lit bar over in Singapore. There's this young American sailor, fresh off his ship, just trying to relax. And then a man in a floral shirt walks up, all friendly-like, buys him a drink, and they just start chatting. And it really is just small talk, right? Nothing serious. The stranger isn't asking about his ship or his mission, nothing like that. But here's the crazy part. By the time that sailor finishes his drink, he has spilled everything. We're talking state secrets, the kind of stuff that could get him court-martialed. And the wildest part? He has absolutely no idea he's done it. So how is that even possible? How does someone give up top secret information in a totally normal conversation? Well, the answer is this incredibly powerful psychological weapon, one that's been perfected by intelligence agencies for decades. It has a name, elicitation. And yeah, it's a very real technique. Spies use it, sure, but so do negotiators, and hey, maybe even your boss has used it on you. And the reason it works so well is because it taps into this fundamental flaw in our own psychology. Okay, so here's the secret sauce, right? Think about it. When someone asks you a direct question, what happens? Your brain's little security alarm goes off. Your guard goes up. It feels intrusive. But a statement? That just feels like a normal conversation. It makes us feel safe, like we're the ones in control. And that, right there, is when we are most vulnerable. So what does this actually look like out in the wild? How do they do it? Let's break down 3 of the most powerful elicitation techniques straight from the spy's own toolkit. All right, we're going to look at 3 main ones. First, there's correcting the record. This one preys on our ego. Then we'll get into disbelief and bracketing, which is a bit more advanced for the really sensitive stuff. And finally, the sew and bet technique, which is all about using fake empathy. We all have that friend, right? The one who's a bit of a know-it-all, the person who just has to correct you no matter how tiny the detail is. Well, this first technique basically weaponizes that exact human impulse. So let's jump back to our sailor in that bar. The spy doesn't ask a question like, hey, how big are your ship's propellers? No way. He makes a statement, and it's a deliberately, almost provocatively, wrong statement. And what does the sailor do? He's proud, he wants to show off what he knows, so he takes the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. He immediately corrects the spy, and bam, in that moment, he's just given up the real classified data. Just like that. Okay, but what if you need more than just one little piece of data? What if you need, the whole story? Well, that's where this next technique comes into play. It's a bit more advanced. So let's imagine you're doing a little, let's call it corporate reconnaissance. You need to find out when your biggest rival is moving their offices. You don't just ask them. Instead, you make a statement with a totally wrong time frame. Something like, oh yeah, I heard you guys are moving sometime between March and April. And just like our sailor, that person's instinct to correct you is going to be too strong to resist. They'll say, no, not March or April. We're actually moving in February. Boom, you've got your first piece of the puzzle. But hang on, because the real magic happens in the very next step. Now, this part is absolutely crucial. You don't just nod and say, oh, okay. You push back. You act shocked. You express disbelief. You challenge what they just told you, making them feel like they suddenly have to prove it to you. And this is where it gets really brilliant. To defend their own ego, they won't just tell you what is happening. They'll tell you why it's happening. They'll start spilling all the details, the internal strategy, the confidential reasoning, all just to prove to you that they were right and you were wrong. All right, our third technique is probably the most subtle of them all. This one is all about keeping that conversation flowing, keeping the information coming, and doing it all under this cozy blanket of empathy. So, this is all about building conversational bridges. When there's a natural pause in the conversation, a lull, you don't jump in with another question. Instead, you offer a statement that sounds empathetic. Something simple like, wow, I bet that was a difficult challenge for you. Or, so it sounds like you've been doing this for a few years now. It makes the other person feel really heard and understood, which of course makes them want to tell you even more. But here's the thing. All of these techniques, from the really simple ones to the more complex ones, They're all built on one single, incredibly powerful principle from the intelligence world. The behavior expert Chase Hughes sums it up perfectly. He says the more sensitive the information you need, the fewer questions you should ask. It's so true. Questions make people put their walls up. Statements invite them to open the door. And that's really the core of why elicitation is so darn effective. The target never, ever feels like they're being interrogated. In their mind, they are the one in control. They think they're the expert, just, correcting you. And that feeling of control is exactly what makes them willing to give up everything. Okay, so after hearing all this, you're probably wondering, how on earth do I protect myself from this kind of manipulation? Well, the good news is it's actually way simpler than you might think. The next time you hear someone make a statement about you or your work that seems just a little off, strangely specific, but also just wrong, the first thing to do is just pause, take a breath, recognize that this could be an elicitation attempt. And whatever you do, do not give in to that powerful urge to correct them. Just smile. You're the one in control here, not them. So from now on, when you're in a conversation and you hear a so-called mistake that feels just a little too convenient, a little too specific, ask yourself, are they just making an honest error, or is it an elicitation? Knowing the difference could be your best defense.